He had all the money in the world, billions earned through sweat and genius. But in this cold, quiet room he had never felt so poor, so utterly helpless. The world's greatest legal minds, the experts he paid millions for, all looked at him with pity and said the fight was over. They told him it was impossible to win, that the evidence was perfect. But they were all looking at the mountains of paper, the angry faces, and the flashing cameras. They failed to see the one person everyone ignored. The one person who, without saying a single word, was about to do the unthinkable and change everything. This is the story of Alexander Sterling. At 58 years old, he was a giant, a man who had climbed from the dirt floor of a tiny village to the top of the world. He built an empire of technology that touched the lives of billions. He was a good man who had created jobs for thousands and given generously to those in need. He believed in hard work and honesty. He believed in loyalty. But loyalty, he was learning, was a very expensive word. If you have ever felt like you were fighting a battle all alone, if you believe that sometimes the smallest light can break the darkest night, please, I am asking you from the bottom of my heart, consider subscribing. Your support is what allows us to find and share these incredible true stories of hope. The courtroom felt like a tomb. The heavy oak doors had slammed shut, sealing Alexander away from the world he once ruled. The air was thick and still, heavy with the smell of old law books and quiet judgment. The whispers from the crowd were like the hissing of snakes, each one a little bite out of his soul. For 30 years, Alexander's voice had commanded boardrooms and moved markets. A single word from him could make a company soar or fall. But here, in this room, his voice was gone. He was just a man in a suit, a prisoner waiting for his sentence. The accusation was a knife in his heart, twisted by the person he trusted most in the world. His best friend and business partner of 3 decades, a man he loved like a brother, stood before the court and called him a monster. He claimed Alexander had built his entire empire on a lie, that he had cheated and stolen to get to the top. Every word was a poison arrow, and Alexander could feel them hitting him, one by one. The man pointing a finger at him was not a stranger, not a rival. It was his other half, the one person he thought would stand by him until the end. The evidence was a mountain, a crushing weight of documents and emails that seemed to prove every lie his friend was telling. Alexander's own lawyers, men known for their brilliant minds, would shuffle the papers with tired hands. They showed him the charts, the graphs, the signatures that looked like his. It was a perfect trap. Every piece of paper was a bar in his cage, and with each passing hour, another bar was locked into place. He watched the faces of the jury, and he could see they believed it. They saw a rich man who got what he deserved. They didn't see the truth. And through it all, there was a quiet, steady presence. The courtroom janitor. An older man, with a gentle face and slow, deliberate movements. He was a part of the room that no one ever noticed. He moved like a ghost through the hallways, emptying bins, wiping smudges from the glass, and mopping the marble floors until they shone like a mirror. He never looked at the judge, the lawyers, or the man whose life was falling apart. His world was the floor, the dust, the simple, honest work of making a place clean. He was invisible to them all. One afternoon, as the lawyers argued, Alexander felt a wave of complete and total despair wash over him. He looked down, unable to watch the smug look on his former friend's face any longer. He saw his own reflection in the janitor's perfectly polished floor. He saw the face of a tired, defeated old man. The fight was gone from his eyes. All the fire that had driven him to build his kingdom had been put out. For the first time in his life, as he stared at that broken reflection, Alexander Sterling truly wanted to give up. Just then, the prosecution delivered its final, powerful speech. The lawyer's voice boomed through the courtroom, each word a hammer blow. He is a fraud. A thief who built his castle on the foundation of a friend's trust. The lawyer pointed at Alexander. Look at him. He has no remorse, no shame. He is guilty. The words hung in the air, and Alexander could feel the jury's hatred like a physical force. It was over. He knew it was over. He closed his eyes, waiting for the final verdict that would end his life as he knew it. Before the judge could speak, before the final nail was hammered into his coffin, I want to ask you something personal. Please, in the comments below, just type the name of the city or the country you are watching this from. There is a powerful reason for this. When you share a small piece of your world with us, it creates a silent thread of connection that travels across the globe, reminding us that we are not alone in our struggles. We genuinely believe that this simple act of sharing will bring a special blessing of peace and happiness to you and your family. The judge cleared his throat, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent room. This was it. Alexander took a deep breath, preparing for the word that would destroy him, guilty. But just as he braced himself, a soft sound broke the silence. A gentle thud. It was nothing important. It was just the old janitor, across the room, accidentally letting his mop handle slip from his tired hand. It hit the marble floor with a quiet click. But as Alexander's eyes snapped open, he didn't look at the judge. He looked at the janitor. He saw the man's shoes. And in that one, tiny, impossible detail that no one else could ever have noticed, everything was about to change. What did he see? How could a janitor's shoes hold the key to a billion-dollar lawsuit? We are standing on the edge of the truth. If this story has captured your heart, if you believe in the power of the unseen, please, I am begging you, subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications. You cannot afford to miss what happens next. The sound was so small. A tiny thud. But in the dead quiet of the courtroom, it felt like a cannon shot. Alexander's eyes snapped open. He did not look at the judge. He did not look at the jury. He looked across the wide, polished floor. He looked at the old janitor. He looked at the man's shoes. His heart did not just beat. It stopped. It froze solid in his chest. On the heel of the janitor's worn, black shoe was a smear of mud. It was not the gray, dirty mud of the city. It was a dark, thick, reddish clay. Alexander knew that mud. He knew it better than he knew his own face. His mind flew backwards, away from the cold courtroom. He was a boy again, running through the deep, dark woods behind his family's old home. The one place on earth he had kept secret. The one place he kept safe, locked away from the world. Redwood Creek. The ground there was a special, deep red, a color found nowhere else in the state. He had built his fortune to protect that land. It was his soul. It was the one place his best friend, Mark, hated. Mark always said the place was too quiet, too old. He swore he would never, ever go there. So why was the mud from that secret place here? Alexander's eyes slowly moved from the shoe up to the janitor's face. The old man was not looking at the judge. He was not looking at his mop. He was staring right at Alexander Sterling. And his face was not calm. It was pale. His eyes were wide with a terror so deep it made Alexander's skin crawl. For 1 second, their eyes locked. A billionaire and a janitor, sharing a secret that no one else in the room could see. Then, the janitor broke the stare. He grabbed his mop, his hands shaking, and almost ran through a small side door, disappearing from sight. He was running. For what? Mr. Sterling. The judge's voice was a clap of thunder. It shattered the moment. Alexander's lawyer was pulling on his sleeve, his face tight with worry. Alexander, stand up. The judge is talking to you. He is giving the jury their final orders. But Alexander's mind was no longer in the room. It was running down a new hallway, a new path. The shoes. The mud. The janitor. The fear. It was a puzzle. It was a tiny, impossible thread of hope. And he had to pull it. But how? He was seconds away from losing everything. He needed time. He needed to think. He pushed himself to his feet. The whole courtroom gasped, expecting him to beg or to cry. "Your Honor," he said. His voice was a dry whisper. "Your Honor, please." The judge looked down at him, his face hard as stone. "What is it, Mr. Sterling? Do you have something to say before I send the jury away?" Alexander knew he was breaking all the rules. He knew this could make everything worse. But what choice did he have? He had to stop that clock, even for a minute. I need a recess, Your Honor," Alexander said. The lawyer for the other side jumped to his feet. "Objection. This is a trick. He is trying to delay. The jury is ready." The judge looked furious. "A recess? On what grounds, Mr. Sterling? This is the very end of the trial. Alexander's mind raced. He could not say, "I saw mud on a janitor's shoe." They would laugh. They would say he was crazy. He had to lie. He put a hand to his chest. I'm not well, Your Honor. I feel faint. Please. Just 5 minutes. I beg you." The judge stared at him, his eyes cold and full of doubt. He wanted to say no. Alexander could see it. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Was this the end? Would he be denied even this one last chance? The judge let out a long, angry breath. "Fine. 5 minutes. And 5 minutes only. We will clear the court." He slammed his gavel. "Court is in recess." The moment the judge's door clicked shut, Alexander grabbed his lawyer's arm. His grip was like steel. "Forget the jury. Forget the case. Find that janitor. Now." His lawyer, a brilliant man named Thomas, looked at him like he was mad. "Alexander, what are you talking about? The janitor? It's over. We lost. We have to prepare you for what comes next." Alexander shook him. "No. Listen to me." He had mud on his shoes. Redwood mud. Dark red clay mud. From the creek. Thomas's face went white. He was the only other person who knew. The case, the lie, it all centered on one thing. A secret meeting Mark swore they had at Redwood Creek. A meeting Alexander swore never happened. Thomas's eyes went wide with understanding. Mark's whole story was built on that meeting. He had provided emails and photos, and a signed paper that proved they met at Redwood to plan the crime. But if Alexander was telling the truth, if Mark never went to Redwood, then who did? And how did that mud get from a locked private forest miles away into this very courtroom? It meant the evidence, the perfect, unbreakable evidence, was a lie. But how? And how did the janitor know? Thomas did not say another word. He just ran. He sprinted out of the courtroom, not towards the main hall, but towards the small side door the janitor had used. Alexander was left alone. The giant, empty room echoed with his pounding heart. 1 minute was gone. Then 2. Then 3. He was standing on the edge of a cliff. Did he just imagine it? Was the stress making him see things? Was he a drowning man grabbing at a shadow? His entire life, his name, his freedom, now rested on a smear of dirt. The main doors opened. It was the judge, his face set, ready to end this. But Thomas was not back. Alexander was alone. He had failed. Then, the small side door burst open. It was Thomas. He was out of breath, his face pale and terrified. He was holding something in his hand. It was a small, torn piece of cloth, dirty and dark. He ran to Alexander, his eyes wild. "The judge is coming," Alexander whispered, his hope dying. "It doesn't matter," Thomas whispered back, his voice shaking. "You were right, Alexander. He was here. But he's gone." He held up the piece of cloth. "He's gone, but he dropped this. He left this behind." Alexander looked. It wasn't just a dirty rag. It was a key. A small, strange, old-fashioned key, with a tag tied to it. The judge was walking back to his tall chair. The heavy door clicked shut behind him. It sounded like a jail cell locking. Alexander Sterling stood frozen, the small, strange key heavy in his hand. It felt cold, like a piece of ice. He looked at his lawyer, Thomas. Thomas's face was white. They had a key, but they had no door. They had a clue, but they had no time. The judge sat down. He picked up his gavel, the small wooden hammer that would end Alexander's life. "This court is now back in session," the judge said, his voice like stone. "The jury will now." "Wait!" Alexander shouted. The word tore out of his throat. It was not a request. It was a scream. Everyone in the courtroom jumped. The jury, who had been filing back in, stopped dead in their tracks. The judge's hand froze in the air. He looked at Alexander, and his eyes were not just angry. They were filled with a cold fire. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, his voice dangerously quiet, "you are testing the patience of this court. You have no right to speak. Sit down. Now." "New evidence, Your Honor," Thomas yelled, jumping in front of Alexander. "We have new, critical evidence that changes everything." The lawyer for the other side leaped up. Objection. This is a joke. The circus trick. They are trying to delay the verdict they know is coming. The room exploded in noise. Reporters were shouting. The judge slammed his gavel. Silence. Order. He looked at Thomas. Mr. Thomas, if you are lying, I will have your license. What evidence? Show it to me. Thomas had to think fast. He could not show the judge a key. He had to show him the reason. Your Honor, Thomas said, his voice shaking but strong. A witness has fled this courtroom. A man who was here just moments ago. The judge scoffed. A witness? Who? The janitor, Thomas said. The other side laughed out loud. The janitor? Are you serious? What? Is he going to testify about the trash? But Thomas stood his ground. He fled because he was terrified. He fled because he was at Redwood Creek. He left this behind. He held up the small, dirty piece of cloth. He did not show the key. He just showed the rag it was wrapped in. That's just a dirty rag, the prosecution lawyer mocked. No, Alexander said, his voice low and powerful. It's not just a rag. Look at it. The court officer took the cloth and gave it to the judge. The judge looked at it with disgust. And what am I looking at, Mr. Sterling? Alexander pointed. That dirt. That is redwood clay. The same mud I saw on his shoes. The same mud my partner, Mark, swore he got on his shoes when he met me there. But Mark was lying, Your Honor. He was never there. But this man, this janitor, he was. The courtroom went completely silent. The puzzle pieces were clicking into place. The entire case, the proof that Alexander was a criminal, was a single piece of paper, a contract Mark said they signed at that secret Redwood meeting. If Mark was never there, the paper was a fake. The entire case was a lie. But why would a simple janitor be at Alexander's secret property? Why would he be so scared? The judge stared at the reddish-brown smear on the cloth. He was no fool. He could see the crack in the story. This is highly unusual, the judge said slowly. The prosecution was pale. They could see their perfect case falling apart. Your Honor, this is nonsense. Is it? The judge asked. It seems to me we have a witness who has fled, and evidence that he was at the scene of the alleged crime. A scene the prosecution has built their entire case around. He looked at Alexander and Thomas. He was giving them a chance. A tiny, 1 in a million chance. I will give you 1 hour. 60 minutes. You will find out what this means. If you come back with nothing, I am ending this. He slammed his gavel. 1 hour. The doors burst open. Alexander and Thomas ran into a private room. The key, Alexander said. They laid it on the table. It was old, brass, and had a small, metal tag. On the tag were 2 simple markings, 10B. What is 10B? Alexander asked. A bank box? A file cabinet? We have 60 minutes. Thomas was thinking hard. He's a janitor. He works here. He has keys. Alexander, it's not a file. It's a locker. Locker 10B. In the staff room. They did not wait. They ran. They burst through the doors and sprinted for the public stairs, ignoring the calls of the guards. They had to get to the basement. Employees only, a sign read. They pushed the door open. It was a long, dark hallway, smelling of bleach and old soap. And at the end of it, a wall of gray metal lockers. There. Thomas pointed. They ran down the line. 8B, 9B, 10B. It was there. The lock was old, but it looked strong. Alexander's hands were shaking too much. He could not get the key in. Thomas took it from him. His hand was steady. He slid the key into the lock. It was a perfect fit. He turned it. A loud click echoed in the empty hallway. Thomas pulled the lock off. He and Alexander stared at the metal door. Everything, Alexander's life, his name, his freedom, the entire truth, was sitting behind this thin piece of metal. Thomas grabbed the handle. He took a deep breath. He pulled the locker door open. It opened with a loud, slow screech. And inside was a simple brown envelope. Nothing else. Just an envelope with one word written on the front. Sterling. Alexander's name. The one word on the envelope stared up at him. His entire life, his whole world, was inside this thin paper rectangle. His hands were shaking so hard he could not tear it open. Thomas, his lawyer, saw him struggle. He took the envelope from Alexander's hand, ripped the top open, and turned it upside down. A single, folded piece of paper fell out onto the cold, metal locker bench. And with it, a tiny, black object. A small computer memory stick. Alexander stared at the note. He was afraid to touch it. "Read it," Thomas whispered. Alexander picked up the paper. The handwriting was neat, but the letters were shaky, as if written by a hand that was trembling with fear. "Mr. Sterling," the note began. "I do not know you. I have only cleaned the floors you walk on. But I know Mr. Mark. And I know what he is doing to you is wrong. My name is Arthur. I am the janitor. I am the one who gave him the mud." Alexander's heart stopped. The confession. It was real. The janitor was the key. He kept reading, his eyes flying across the page. "Mr. Mark found out my son is very, very sick. He needs an operation I can never pay for. Mr. Mark came to me. He said he would pay for everything. He would save my son's life." A tear rolled down Alexander's face. This was not about greed. This was about a father's love. "But he said I had to do something for him. He gave me a map. He sent me to your secret land, the one with the red dirt. He told me to fill a box with it. He said it was for a joke," the letter went on. "But then he called me to his office. He had a pair of new shoes, just like his. He made me help him. We put the mud on the shoes. He took pictures. He practiced his story, how he would lie and say you met him there." Alexander felt sick. His best friend, his brother, had not just lied. He had planned it. He had built the lie, piece by piece, like a set for a play. He had practiced how to destroy him. And he had used a poor, desperate man to do it. "I took the money," Arthur wrote. "I saved my son. But I have not slept in a month. I am a coward, but I am not a bad man. Mr. Mark is the bad man. He is a monster. He told me if I ever said one word, he would make sure my son's sickness came back. He would hurt my family. I was so scared." This was why Arthur ran. He was not just scared of the court. He was terrified of Mark. He was a prisoner. "But I could not let him win," the letter finished. "I could not let an innocent man go to jail. I am not smart with phones, but I am not stupid. When he brought me to his office to plan, I was so scared, I turned on the little voice recorder on my old phone. I have it all." Alexander looked at Thomas, his eyes wide. "A recording." He bragged about it. "He told me the whole plan. It is on the little black stick. Please, use it. Get him. I am taking my family and we are running. Please do not look for me. Just get him." Thomas grabbed the small, black USB stick. "A recording. Alexander, this is it. This is the proof." He looked at his watch. "Oh no. No. We have been gone for 12 minutes. The judge gave us 1 hour. We have 48 minutes left, Alexander. We have to run." They did not wait. They flew out of the dark basement, their shoes pounding on the stone steps. They burst back into the bright hallway, past the shocked faces of reporters, and into their private room. Thomas slammed the door shut, locking it. He ripped his laptop from his bag and threw it on the table. His hands were shaking as he tried to turn it on. Come on, boot up," he hissed. The screen glowed to life. It felt like an eternity. "We don't have time for this," Alexander said, pacing like a caged lion. "What if it's a trick? What if it's empty?" Thomas jammed the USB stick into the side of the computer. "It's not a trick. It's a confession. I can feel it." A new window popped up on the screen. "New drive found." Thomas clicked it. The folder was empty, except for one single file. It was not a video. It was an audio file, a sound file. It was named, "The Plan." Thomas looked at Alexander. "This is it. Are you ready?" Alexander nodded, his face pale. "I have to know. I have to hear it. Play it." Thomas moved the mouse cursor over the file. He took a deep breath. He clicked the button. For a second, there was only static. A loud, hissing sound. Alexander's heart sank. "It's nothing. It's just static." "Wait," Thomas said. Then, a voice cut through the static. A voice Alexander had known for 30 years. It was Mark's voice. He was laughing. "It's so easy," Mark's voice said, clear as day. "He trusts me so much. He's a fool." And then, another voice spoke. A voice that did not belong to Arthur the janitor. It was a voice that made Alexander's blood turn to ice. It was the lead prosecutor. The lawyer who was trying to send him to jail. "Just make sure the janitor keeps his mouth shut," the prosecutor said. "And the company is all ours." Alexander felt the blood drain from his face. It was not just his friend. It was the prosecutor. The man the law had sent to find the truth. The man who had pointed at him day after day, calling him a criminal. That man was a part of the lie. He was not just a lawyer, he was a thief. The recording played on. The room was so quiet, the sound of the two men laughing, Mark and the prosecutor, Mr. Graves, felt like a slap in the face. They were laughing about how easy it was. How stupid Alexander was to trust them. How they would split the company, 50-50, once he was in jail. The plan was not just to frame him. It was to steal everything. They had planned it all, for months. They planned the fake evidence. They planned the lies. They even planned which judge to get, knowing he was tough and would not listen to excuses. And they used Arthur, the poor janitor, as their perfect tool. They used his son's life to get what they wanted. Alexander's knees felt weak. He grabbed the table to keep from falling. His best friend had not just stabbed him in the back. He had held him down while the prosecutor helped him twist the knife. "Alexander." Thomas's voice was a sharp whisper. "The clock." Alexander looked at the laptop screen. The time in the corner showed they had been in the room for 30 minutes. The judge had given them an hour. They had 30 minutes left. 30 minutes to take this bomb, walk it back into that courtroom, and blow up the entire case. But how? How do you tell a judge that the man running the case for the state is the real criminal? What if he doesn't believe them? Thomas was thinking, his mind moving a mile a minute. "He'll stop us," Thomas whispered, his eyes wide. "The second we try to play this, Graves will object. He'll say it's a secret recording, that it's illegal. He will tie it up in rules and laws. The judge will agree, and he will never let the jury hear it. We only have one chance. We cannot miss." Alexander looked at the laptop, at the file named The Plan. He felt a coldness spread through him, a feeling he had not felt in years. It was not fear. It was anger. "So we don't ask to play it," Alexander said, his voice low and dangerous. "We walk in there. You tell the judge we have proof the witness, Mark, lied. You say you have a recording of Mark." Thomas nodded, seeing the plan. "I'll demand to play it. Graves will object. He'll fight to keep it out. And when he does," Alexander finished, "when he is screaming that it is illegal and a lie, that is when you trap him. That is when you tell the judge why he's so scared. Because his own voice is on it." The plan was terrifying. It could backfire. The judge could throw them both in jail for contempt of court. But it was the only way. Thomas grabbed the USB stick. He did not put it in his pocket. He held it in his closed hand, his knuckles white. He unlocked the door to their private room and pulled it open. The noise of the hallway rushed in. Reporters were still waiting, but they backed away. The look on Alexander Sterling's face was not the look of a defeated man anymore. It was the look of a hunter. They walked through the heavy courtroom doors. Every eye turned to them. The air was thick with expectation. The judge was sitting at his bench, his face like thunder. He looked at his watch. "Your time is up, Mr. Thomas. I am guessing by the look on your faces that you have failed." He picked up his gavel. "I am now instructing the jury to wait." Thomas's voice boomed, echoing in the huge room. He walked to the center of the floor, right in front of the judge. The prosecutor, Mr. Graves, stood up, a smug, cruel smile on his face. He thought he had won. "Your Honor," Thomas said, his voice clear and strong. "We did not find the janitor. He is gone. But we found what he left behind. We found the truth." He held up the tiny black USB stick for the whole court to see. "This," he said, "is a recording. A full confession. It proves that the prosecution's entire case is a lie. It is the voice of their star witness, Mark admitting to the whole thing. Admitting he faked the evidence, admitting he lied, admitting he framed Mr. Sterling. A huge gasp went up from the crowd. Mark's lawyers, sitting at their table, went white as ghosts. But the prosecutor, Mr. Graves, was the first to speak. He was on his feet, his face red with fake anger. "Objection," he roared. "This is an outrage. A desperate, pathetic trick. That recording is illegal. It was made in secret. It is against all the rules. It is trash. I demand you stop this circus right now. The court cannot and will not listen to it." He was shouting, spitting, his eyes wild with panic. The judge looked at Thomas. He was frowning. "He has a point, Mr. Thomas. If this was recorded without consent, I cannot allow it to be played." The prosecutor smiled, his victory certain. This was the moment. Thomas let the silence hang in the room for one long, painful second. He looked at Mr. Graves. He looked at the judge. Then he said the words that would change everything. "He is right, Your Honor. Mr. Graves is absolutely right. He knows all about this recording. He knows exactly what is on it, because he is on it too." The room stopped breathing. All the air was sucked out of the giant hall. The reporters froze, their pens held in the air. The jury stared, their mouths open. The prosecutor, Mr. Graves, looked like he had been hit by a truck. His face, which was red and angry just a second ago, turned a pale, sickly white. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish, gasping for air. He was trapped. He knew it. And now, everyone else in the room knew it too. He had built a perfect cage for Alexander Sterling. But in his pride, in his greed, he had not seen that he was standing in the very same cage. And Thomas, Alexander's lawyer, had just slammed the door shut and locked it. Mr. Graves looked at the judge, his eyes wide and full of pure terror. He tried to speak. That is a lie. A trick," he stammered. But his voice was weak. The power was gone. All the thunder and anger had vanished, leaving only a scared, guilty man. The judge stared at Mr. Graves. He did not look at Thomas. He did not look at Alexander. He just stared at his own prosecutor. The judge was an old man. He had seen liars every day for 40 years. He knew the look. He knew the smell of fear. And he could see it pouring off Mr. Graves. "Mr. Graves," the judge said, his voice quiet, but so cold it made the room feel like winter. "Are you telling me you are not on that recording?" It was a trap. A perfect question. If Graves said, "Yes, I am," he was finished. If he said, "No, I am not," he was lying to the court. He would be finished anyway. Mr. Graves just stood there, shaking. He had no answer. The judge's face hardened. He turned to Thomas. "Mr. Thomas, you will not just play this recording. You will play it for the entire court. On the main speakers. Now." He pointed to the court officer. "Help him. Make it loud." The prosecutor sank into his chair, a dead man. Thomas walked to the main desk. The court officer helped him plug a small wire from his laptop into the courtroom speaker system. A loud pop and a hiss filled the room. Every person was leaning forward. This was it. The truth. Thomas looked at Alexander. Alexander nodded. His heart was pounding so hard, he thought it would break his ribs. He looked at Mark, his best friend. Mark was not looking at him. He was staring at the laptop, his face like a mask of ice. Thomas pressed the play button. The static hissed again. And then, Mark's voice. It was not the sad, hurt voice he used in court. This was his real voice. Laughing. "It's so easy," Mark's voice echoed through the room, loud and clear. "He trusts me so much. He's a fool. He really thinks that old janitor just found a sick kid. He has no idea I paid for the whole thing." Alexander closed his eyes. Hearing it was 1,000 times worse than reading it. It was the voice of the man who was the best man at his wedding. Then the second voice came. The prosecutor's voice. "Just make sure the janitor keeps his mouth shut," Mr. Graves' voice boomed from the speakers. "He's the only loose end." The jury gasped. One woman put her hand over her mouth. The judge was staring at Mr. Graves, his face carved from stone. The prosecutor himself was staring at the floor, his whole body shaking. He did not even try to stop it. He could not. It was his own voice, confessing to his own crime. The recording went on. For 5 long, terrible minutes. The whole courtroom listened as Mark and Mr. Graves planned the entire crime. They heard them laugh about the red mud from Redwood Creek. They heard them plan how to fake the signatures on the contract. They heard them deciding how to split Alexander's money, his homes, his company. "He'll be in jail for 20 years, Mark's voice said. "And we," the prosecutor's voice added, "will be on a beach in Spain, drinking to his health." Alexander opened his eyes. He looked at Mark. His friend was not looking at the judge or the jury or the lawyers. He was looking right at Alexander. And his face was not sad. It was not sorry. It was full of hate. Pure, cold poison. He was not sorry he did it. He was only sorry he got caught. Though that look was the final betrayal. It hurt more than the prison, more than the money, more than the lie. The recording finished. A final, bragging laugh from Mark cut off into silence. The hiss of the static returned. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was louder than any scream. It stretched on for 10 seconds. 20. 30. The judge sat perfectly still, his hands folded. He slowly, very slowly, turned his head. He did not look at Alexander. He did not look at Thomas. He looked at the 2 armed guards standing by the courtroom door. And then he pointed. He pointed right at the prosecutor's table. The judge's finger was like a statue. It did not move. It pointed right at Mr. Graves. The prosecutor, a man who had put hundreds of people in jail, was frozen in his chair. He looked small. He looked weak. The judge spoke, his voice low, but every single person in the giant room heard him. "Guards, arrest this man. Arrest him for lying to the court. Arrest him for hiding the truth. Arrest him for trying to send an innocent man to prison." 2 guards walked past Alexander. They did not even look at him. They walked straight to the prosecutor's table. They pulled Mr. Graves up from his chair. He did not fight. He was like a doll, his arms loose, his face empty. The guards pulled his arms behind his back. The sound of the metal handcuffs clicking shut was the loudest sound Alexander had ever heard. It was the sound of the trap snapping shut. It was the sound of the lie dying. But the judge was not finished. He was not even looking at Mr. Graves as the guards pulled him away. The judge's hand moved. He pointed again. This time, his finger was aimed right at the other table. It was aimed right at Mark. "And him," the judge's voice boomed. "Arrest him for lying under oath. For faking evidence. For this evil plan." Mark's lawyers, who had been paid millions of dollars, just backed away from him. They put their hands up as if he was a disease. They left him all alone. The guards started walking toward Mark. And that is when Mark finally broke. The mask of hate and ice shattered. He leaped to his feet, his chair crashing to the floor. "No, you can't," he screamed, his voice high and shrill, like a frightened animal. "You can't. It's a lie. The recording is fake. He made it up. He's the criminal, not me. He's the one who lies." He pointed at Alexander, his whole body shaking with rage. "Tell them, Alex. Tell them it's a lie." Alexander just looked at him. He felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just empty. All the pain had been burned away, leaving only ashes. He had only one question. The only question that mattered. Why? Alexander's voice was quiet, but the whole room heard him. 30 years, Mark. We were brothers. I loved you. I gave you everything. Why? The question hung in the air. The guards stopped, waiting. Mark looked at Alexander, his face twisted with a lifetime of poison. Why? Mark laughed, but it was a terrible, broken sound. Because you had everything. And I had you. I was always Alexander's friend. Always in your shadow. I built that company with you. I worked just as hard. But it was always your name on the door. Your face in the paper. I deserved it. I deserved it all, not you. And I was going to take it. There was the truth. It was not about a single crime. It was about a whole life of jealousy. A poison Mark had been drinking every day for 30 years. The judge slammed his gavel. The sound was like a thunderclap. "That is enough," he shouted. "The jury is dismissed. This trial is over." He looked at Alexander. For the first time, his eyes were not cold. They were soft. They were tired. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, "this court apologizes to you. All charges against you are dismissed. You are an innocent man. You are free to go." Free. The word hit Alexander, but it did not feel real. The room exploded. Reporters ran for the doors. People were shouting, crying. Cameras were flashing, bright bursts of light that made him blind. Thomas grabbed him and hugged him, laughing and crying at the same time. "We did it, Alexander. We won. You're free." But Alexander just stood there. He was free, but he felt more lost than he had in the courtroom. He had won his company. He had won his name. But he had lost the man who was his brother. As the guards pulled a screaming Mark out of the room, Thomas pressed something into Alexander's hand. It was not the USB stick. It was the letter. The janitor's letter. Alexander opened it and read the last lines again. "I am a coward, but I am not a bad man. I am taking my family and we are running. Please, do not look for me." Alexander looked up at the empty courtroom, at the polished floors. The man who saved him was gone. He had sacrificed everything, his job, his home, his safety, all for a stranger. Alexander turned to Thomas, the noise of the room fading away. The case was over. But the story was not. "Mark and Graves are going to jail," Alexander said, his voice quiet. "But Arthur, the janitor, he's in danger. They used him. They threatened his son. They won't just let him go. We have to find him. We have to find him before they do." He was free. But now he had a new mission. He had to save the man who had saved him. The courtroom was a storm of noise. Cameras flashed like lightning, and reporters shouted Alexander's name. "Mr. Sterling, how does it feel? Mr. Sterling, what will you do now?" But Alexander did not hear them. He was a rock in the middle of a loud, rushing river. He held the janitor's letter in his hand as if it was a map. He looked at Thomas, his eyes clear and sharp. "Forget the press," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Get our security team. We are not done." Thomas nodded, pushing through the wall of people. Alexander was free, but he felt a new, colder fear. Arthur and his sick son were out there, alone. And the men they had just exposed, they were not the only guilty ones. Thomas came back just moments later with two of Alexander's private security guards, big men who looked serious and calm. "The police have Graves and Mark," Thomas said quietly. "They are being held. But that's the problem. Their lawyers are already screaming. And men like Graves, men like Mark, they don't work alone. They have friends. Powerful friends. People who are going to make millions from this lie. They will not just let this go. They will want to clean up any loose ends. And the only loose end left is Arthur." "The locker room," Alexander said. "We start there. He left the key and the note. He might have left something else. A clue. Anything." They moved fast, pushing past the reporters and running down the same employees-only hallway they had run down just an hour before. It felt like a lifetime ago. But when they got to the basement, it was already different. The hallway was not empty. Two police officers stood in front of the wall of gray lockers. The entire basement was now a crime scene. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling," one of the officers said. He looked young and nervous. "We are very glad you are free, sir. But this whole area is part of a very big investigation now. Graves was a high-level official. This is a mess. No one is allowed in or out." Alexander looked past the officer's shoulder. He saw locker 10B. Its door was hanging open, empty, just as they had left it. The police had already taken everything. They had the locker, but they had no idea who Arthur was, or how important he was. A cold dread washed over Alexander. What if the police, in their normal, slow way, looked into Arthur? What if they put out a notice for him, asking him to come in as a witness? That would be like sending a signal, a giant flare, to Mark's and Graves' friends. It would tell them exactly who to hunt. The police thought Arthur was a witness. They didn't understand he was a target. "We can't tell them," Alexander said to Thomas, his voice just a whisper. "If we tell them, his name goes on a report. And that report will leak. We have to find him first. We have to do this ourselves." They went back to a private room. The noise from the hall was now a dull roar. Alexander spread Arthur's shaky letter out on the table. "He said his son was sick," Alexander said, thinking out loud. "Very sick. He needed an operation he could not pay for. That's how Mark trapped him. That's the key." Thomas snapped his fingers, his eyes wide. "The money! Mark paid him. If we can find out how Mark paid him, we can find Arthur. A bank account. A wire transfer. We follow the money." Alexander was not just a man anymore. He was a billionaire with a mission. He pulled out his phone. He did not dial. He called his bank's president, a man he knew well. "I need you to do something for me." "No questions," Alexander said. "I need you to find a large payment. From any of Mark's accounts. To a man named Arthur." He paused, looking at the letter. It was signed only Arthur. "That's the only name I have. Just Arthur." The banker was silent. "Sir, without a last name, that is impossible. It's like finding one drop of rain in the ocean." Alexander hung up, frustrated. He paced the room like a caged animal. The bank is a dead end. Think, a sick son. An operation. Where would the money go? Not to Arthur. It would go to the hospital. Thomas's face lit up. "Yes, of course. Mark would have paid the hospital directly. It's cleaner. Easier to hide." Alexander was already on the phone again, this time to the head of his personal security team, a man who could find anyone. "I need a list. Every children's hospital in this state. I need a list of every patient who had a major, life-saving surgery in the last 2 months, paid for by Mark, or his company, or any shell company he owns." "Sir, that's a lot of information," the security man said. His voice was careful. "That is private, medical information. It's illegal. We can't just find it." Alexander roared. He was not asking. "I don't care what it takes. We are not looking for a criminal. We are looking for a hero. We are looking for a family in terrible danger. Do it now." He hung up the phone. The waiting was the worst part. Every minute that ticked by was a minute Arthur and his family were out there, alone, being hunted. An hour passed. Then 2. The courtroom was now dark and empty. The reporters had finally left. Alexander and Thomas sat in the silent room, the letter on the table between them. The phone buzzed. It was the security team. Alexander snatched it up, his heart pounding. "What did you find?" "We found him," the voice said. "The payment was made 3 weeks ago. To the City Children's Hospital. For a heart operation. The boy's name is Leo." Alexander held his breath. "And the father?" "The father's name is Arthur Pineda." Thomas grabbed a pen. "Where are they? What's the address?" The security man paused. "That's the problem, sir. They checked out of the hospital yesterday. And the address they gave, it's a fake. It's an empty, old building. They're already running." A fake address. An empty building. Arthur Pineda was a ghost. He had taken his family and vanished into thin air. Alexander stood in the dark, empty courtroom, the silence pressing in on him. He had all the money in the world. He had just won the fight of his life. But he had never felt so helpless. The clock was ticking. He could feel it in his bones. Mark and Graves were in a cell, but their darkness had long arms. Their rich, angry friends were out there. And they were hunting for the one man who had brought them all down. "Forget the address," Alexander said, his voice sharp and clear. He was not a victim anymore. He was a protector. He spoke into his phone to the head of his security team. "I want every man you have on this. His name is Arthur Pineda. He worked as a janitor here. He has a wife. He has a son named Leo, who just had heart surgery. I want you to find anything. Find where they bought food. Find where they bought medicine. Find the car they used. Find the bus they took. I want to know where they are, and I want to know now." The weight was a fire, burning up the air in the room. Minutes felt like hours. Alexander paced the floor, the same floor Arthur used to clean. Thomas was on his own phone, talking to a private detective, trying to dig up Arthur's file from the courthouse. He hung up, his face pale. "Alexander, this is bad." The man was paid in cash every week. He had no bank account, no driver's license, no credit cards. He lived in the shadows. He was invisible on purpose. How do you find a man who spent his whole life making sure he could not be found? Alexander stopped pacing. His mind was clear. He wasn't invisible to everyone. Thomas looked at him, confused. "What?" "The hospital," Alexander said, a new energy in his voice. "His son Leo. A boy with a bad heart. He wasn't just in the hospital for one day. He would have been there for weeks, maybe months. He had doctors. He had nurses. People knew that family. They loved that boy. We are looking in the wrong place. The secret isn't in the money. It's in the people who cared." They raced to the city children's hospital. It was late at night, and the bright, colorful hallways were quiet and still. The air smelled of clean soap and medicine. They did not go to the front desk, where they would be stopped by rules and questions. Alexander's security team had found the name of Leo's main nurse, the one who had cared for him the most. Her name was Maria. They found her on the heart floor, checking the chart of a tiny, sleeping baby. "Nurse Maria?" Alexander said gently. He tried not to startle her. The nurse turned. Her eyes were tired and kind, but she smiled. "Yes? Can I help you?" We are looking for Arthur Pineda," Thomas said, trying to sound calm. "We're friends of his. Leo's father." The second he said the name, the nurse's face changed. The kindness vanished. It was like a steel door slamming shut. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cold. "I don't know who you are talking about." She turned her back on them. She was lying. She was protecting them. Alexander stepped forward. He did not use his billionaire voice. He did not sound powerful. He sounded broken. "Please," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "Please, don't turn away. We are not here to hurt them. We are here to save them." The nurse froze, but she did not turn around. "You don't understand," Alexander begged. "Arthur, he's a hero. He saved my life today. He saved me. And because he did it, very bad men are now hunting him. They are hunting his wife, and they are hunting his son. If we don't find them first, they will be hurt." The nurse, Maria, turned around slowly. Her eyes were wide with fear. She searched Alexander's face, looking for the lie. She wanted to believe him, but she was terrified. How do I know?" she whispered, her whole body shaking. "How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're not one of them lying to me?" This was it. Their last chance. If Alexander said the wrong thing, she would call security, and Arthur's family would be left alone in the dark, with the wolves closing in. Alexander thought of the letter. The shaky, honest words. He looked right into Maria's eyes. "Because I know what he told me. He told me he was a coward, but he was not a bad man." The nurse's hand flew to her mouth. "He said he couldn't let an innocent man go to jail. He told me about his son's heart. And he told me he was sorry he had to run." Tears began to roll down Maria's face. She believed him. "Oh God," she whispered. He was so scared. She reached into the pocket of her scrubs and pulled out a small, worn, folded piece of paper. "They aren't in the city," she said, her voice a desperate whisper. He knew they would be hunted. He said they had to go where no one would ever think to look. A place from his past. A place he said was the only place he ever felt safe when he was a boy. She handed the paper to Alexander. "He made me memorize it just in case Leo got sick again. It's a bus ticket. To a tiny town in the mountains, 500 miles from here. But, sir, the bus left 4 hours ago. They're on the road. Right now." The bus was a ghost, a moving shadow on a dark highway, for hours ahead of them. For hours. In that time, the men hunting Arthur could be anywhere. They could be on the same bus. They could be waiting at the next stop. Alexander looked at the small, flimsy bus ticket in his hand. It was a death sentence and a map to salvation all in one. He turned to Thomas and his security team. "We are not taking the road," he said, his voice calm and cold as steel. "We are taking the sky." Within 30 minutes, they were lifting off the ground. The spinning blades of a private helicopter chopped the night air. The city lights of a world that had almost destroyed him shrank below, becoming a carpet of tiny, glittering jewels. Alexander was not looking at the beauty. He was looking north, into the blackness, towards the mountains. He had spent his life flying above the world, looking down. But tonight, he was not looking down on everyone. He was looking for someone. One good man, in a world of shadows. His security chief's voice crackled through the headset. "Sir, we have a problem. The bus is not just a bus anymore. A black car has been following it for the last 50 miles. It is keeping its distance, but it is there. We are not the only ones looking for him." The race was on. It was a race in the dark, on a lonely highway, with a family's life as the prize. "Get me the bus route," Alexander commanded. "Find a stop. A quiet place. We have to get to them before that car does. Go faster." The helicopter tilted, picking up speed, a dragonfly of hope chasing a storm. On the bus, Arthur Pineda held his sleeping son, Leo, close to his chest. He could feel the boy's small, fragile heartbeat, a rhythm that was steady and strong for the first time in his life. Every time a car's headlights swept past the window, Arthur flinched. Every time the bus slowed down, his heart pounded in his throat. He looked at his wife, her face pale with fear in the dim light. They had run. But what if they had not run far enough? Then he heard it, a strange, chopping sound from above. He looked out the window, up into the dark sky. And he saw it. A helicopter, like a dark bird, following them. His heart turned to ice. They had found him. The bus pulled into a small, lonely rest stop in the middle of nowhere. A single gas station, its lights humming in the deep country silence. The bus driver announced a 10-minute break. This was it. Arthur grabbed his wife's hand. "We have to run," he whispered. "Into the woods. Now." But as they stood up, the helicopter was already landing in the empty parking lot, its wind pushing dust and leaves everywhere. The door slid open. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out. It was him. It was Alexander Sterling. Arthur froze. He was trapped. He pushed his wife and Leo behind him, trying to shield them. He expected anger. He expected to be yelled at, to be called a coward. Alexander walked towards him, his face unreadable in the flashing lights of the helicopter. He stopped a few feet away. He did not look angry. He looked tired. He looked sad. "Arthur," Alexander said, his voice quiet. He held up his empty hands. "I'm not here to thank you," he said. "I am here to protect you." Just as he said it, the black car that had been following the bus screeched into the gas station. 2 large men got out. They were not smiling. But before they could take 2 steps, 2 other cars, dark and quiet, surrounded them. Alexander's security team, who had driven ahead on the ground, stepped out. They did not pull guns. They just stood there, a wall of calm, strong men. The 2 men from the black car looked at the wall of men, looked at the helicopter, and they knew. It was over. They got back in their car and drove away, disappearing back into the night. The threat was gone. Arthur stared, his mind trying to understand what had just happened. Alexander took a step closer. "You and your family will never have to run again," he said softly. "I have a house. A safe place, far away from here. New names. The best doctors in the world for Leo. You saved my life, Arthur. Now, please, let me give you yours back." Tears streamed down Arthur's face. He was not a coward. He was not a janitor. He was a father. And his family was finally, truly, safe. And this is where our story ends. But before we go, I want to ask you for something very important. We live in a world that celebrates the loud, the rich, and the powerful. But the real heroes are the quiet ones, the invisible ones, the Arthurs of the world, who do the right thing even when they are terrified. If you believe that one good person can change the world, if this story has touched your heart, please, I'm asking you, take a moment to click that like button. Share this story with someone you love. And if you have not already, please subscribe to our channel. It is your support that allows us to keep telling these stories, to keep searching for the light in the darkness. A few months later, in a small, sunny town where no one knew his name, Alexander Sterling sat on a park bench. He was not in a suit. He was wearing simple clothes. He watched a young boy named Leo kick a soccer ball, laughing, his new heart strong and full of life. Arthur and his wife sat beside him, their faces calm and happy. They were not friends. They were more than that. They were family. Alexander had lost a brother in that courtroom, a brother bound by greed. But here, in the sunshine, he had found a new one, a brother bound by courage. And he finally understood. True wealth is not what you have. It's what you protect. It's the loyalty you earn. And it's having the wisdom to finally see the heroes that no one else does.